Hello and welcome to DOZ Monologues, hosted by Aunty Ebele. DOZ Monologues, also known as DOZ Chronicles Audio Stories, aims to educate, inspire, and drive societal change. All stories are written and narrated by Aunty Ebele, and all rights are reserved, including the right of reproduction in whole or in part in any form. This is episode 14, titled My Mother. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. My mother. On the first anniversary of my mother's passing, I found myself reflecting on her and the day she died. It was early in the morning when my father called my husband, Charles, to break the news. At that moment, my world stopped. To this day, I have no idea how I managed to get into the vehicle for the long drive from Lagos to Asaba. She was my friend, my confidant, my whole world, and suddenly, without warning, she was taken from me. What breaks my heart the most is that I never had a chance to say goodbye. Reflecting on the circumstances surrounding her death, I can't shake the feeling that there was something I could have done to improve her life and keep her alive longer. My mother was a victim of domestic violence. Since I was a young child, I had known that my father frequently abused my mother. She was his punching bag and his outlet for frustration. When life dealt him a harsh blow, he would come home and take it out on her. If others disrespected him, he would unleash his anger on her. If he didn't receive a pay raise or failed in his pursuits, he would return home and blame her. Even when his mistress left him, it was my mother who bore the brunt of his anger. What I hadn't realized for many years was the profound impact that the years of abuse had on my mother's mental health. The beatings she endured left her suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, something I only came to understand after I was newly married. Mom and I were in America when I made this discovery. Charles, my husband, bought her a ticket to join me as I was due to give birth to our twin daughters. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, my mother was in the kitchen, busily preparing food while the twins and I rested. Later that evening, I woke up with a strong craving for a cup of hot chocolate and decided to go downstairs to make some for myself. As I quietly entered the kitchen, Mom was standing by the sink, with her back to me, humming an Igbo gospel song and shaking her waist as she washed the pot under the running water. Her joy at becoming a grandmother for the first time was evident, and I hung back in the doorway, smiled, and watched her for a bit before taking a step further into the space, moving towards her to wrap my arms around her and hug her. As I did, my mother suddenly spun around, fear on her face. The pot in her hand slipped and fell to the ground, clattering loudly. "Mom!" I exclaimed in shock. "What is the matter? Are you all right?" She bent to pick up the pot and put a hand over her chest, heaving a sigh of relief as she did. "Chioma, don't frighten me like that again," she said sternly. I frowned. She had given me a fright, and yet she was asking me not to frighten her again. Before I could say anything, she dropped the pot in the sink and turned around to look at me while wiping her hands on her apron. "Why aren't you in bed?" she asked. "You should sleep now that the twins are down for a nap." "I know, Mom, but I was craving a cup of hot chocolate." "Sit down," she ordered, pointing towards the four-seater dining table in the kitchen. "I will make it for you." I obeyed and sat down, and a few minutes later, she placed a hot cup of chocolate on the table in front of me. "Drink up and go to bed," she said. "Thank you," I murmured, and as she was going to walk away, I grabbed her hand. "Sit down, Mom." "I am cooking, Chioma," she protested. "This will only take a few minutes," I assured her, and reluctantly, she pulled out a chair and sat next to me at the table. "Why were you so scared?" I asked, going straight to the point. "And please, don't tell me it's nothing. I am no longer a child, and you have no need to lie to protect me. I am an adult, and I need to know why you reacted as you did just now." My mother sighed deeply, and for a few minutes she just sat there, staring at her hands on the table. Hands that were wrinkled, not because she was old, but because she had worked hard to provide for us, me and my two younger siblings. My mother ran all kinds of businesses from home to look after us, so we lacked nothing. My father provided for our family, but he offered only a little and expected my mother to somehow make it all work. She certainly rose to the challenge. As far back as I can remember, she was a hard worker. She raised poultry, operated a fish farm, cultivated snails, grew ugu, and cooked for events and parties. Thankfully, Charles placed her on a substantial monthly salary, bringing an end to her years of hard labor. "Mom, what is it?" I urged. "You can talk to me." She let out another sigh. "For a moment I was reminded of your father," she finally said. "For years he would charge into the kitchen while I was working, often when I was at the sink with my back turned to him. I would turn just in time to see him coming, but I couldn't shield myself from his blows." "How long has this been going on?" I asked, referring to her reaction. She shrugged and said, "To be honest, I didn't even realize I was having a PTSD reaction to all those years of being attacked in the kitchen until just now. I usually feel jumpy when I'm alone in the kitchen, but I never really stopped to think about why until this moment." Recognizing the depth of my mother's pain, I implored her not to go back to my father. I believed that true healing was impossible while she remained in the same house as the person who had caused her years of suffering. Living under his roof, surrounded by memories of past trauma, would only prolong her agony. Despite my pleas, my mother stood firm in her resolve. She explained that Ifeoma and Emeka, my younger siblings, were still at home. Although I pointed out that both were grown, university students able to look after themselves, she insisted on returning, driven by a sense of duty and responsibility towards them. When we returned to Nigeria, my mother spent a week with me, helping to settle me in as I adjusted to life with the twins. Then she returned to her matrimonial house in Asaba, once again placing her children's needs before her own. 5 years on, my mother remained with my father, while my sister Ifeoma had married and relocated to the UK with her husband, and my brother Emeka had completed his engineering degree and left for the UK to pursue his master's. Then we received the call that she had passed away, and Charles and I traveled to Asaba. Our first stop was at my father's house. For a man who had just lost his wife, he appeared dry-eyed, and looking around the house, no one would have guessed the tragedy he had just experienced. He repeated the story he had told Charles over the phone, that my mother had been hit by a motorcycle rider who had taken her to the hospital. At the hospital, Charles requested an autopsy to determine the cause of death. That night, I went to bed not only grieving my loss, but also feeling deeply unsettled. Something didn't seem right regarding my mother's death, particularly the circumstances surrounding it. The next day brought more clarity. Charles and I left for the house early, so I could put away her things. When we arrived, I encountered a woman I had seen there the previous day. She seemed unfamiliar to me, and I noticed she wasn't wearing a wedding band. I wondered about her relationship with my father, how she had not only been there the day before when Charles and I arrived, but also there again early that morning. She also seemed quite at home, making breakfast for my dad when we arrived. Charles and I declined to eat, insisting we had a meal in the hotel and just wanted to get on with packing up my mother's stuff. As I walked towards the main bedroom, my father called out to me. "Your mom's things are not there," he said. "They are in the garage." I raised a brow. "Garage?" "It's not been used as a garage for some years now," he said hurriedly. "She had it remodeled and kept her things there." He led the way and opened the door. It was decent, a large room that included a bedroom area, a sitting area, and an ensuite bathroom. As I looked around, it was apparent that this space belonged to my mother. Her touch was evident in everything, from the furniture to the choice of wall paint and curtains. Yet it made no sense to me. When did she stop living with my dad in the main bedroom and move into the garage? And why the garage? The house was a 4-bedroom bungalow. She could have chosen any of the 3 other rooms we had used as children, or even moved out completely, which I had been asking her to do. Charles and I didn't discuss the matter, since we were busy packing away her belongings. A few hours later, as we were leaving the house, a woman approached me. I recognized her immediately and let out a joyful shriek. We embraced each other warmly. "Aunty Ebele, how are you?" I asked, delighted to see her. Aunty Ebele had been our neighbor for many years and had developed a close bond with my mother from the moment she and her children moved into the house next door. She often assisted my mother in looking after us, and my mother in return supported her and her daughters with food and hand-me-down dresses from Ifoma and me. "Chioma, my darling, it is so good to see you again after such a long time," she said, bursting into tears. I held her tightly as I struggled with my own tears. She was close to my mother, and I knew she would miss her greatly. "Please, I need to come and see you," she said as she pulled back from the embrace and wiped her eyes. I provided her with the hotel's name and address, and later that afternoon, she came to visit. Charles left us alone to talk, as Aunty Ebele seemed to have a lot on her mind, and she wasted no time in revealing the reason for her visit once we were alone. "Chioma, why did you go away for so long without coming home to visit?" I smiled at her, understanding her meaning. After my wedding, I never returned home to Asaba until my mother passed away. There was no need to go back because my home in Lagos was always open to my mother and my siblings. They visited often enough that I didn't miss them long enough to feel the urge to look for them in Asaba. Eventually, Ifoma and Emeka moved to the United Kingdom. My father and I had never been close. I didn't miss him when I left home, and he was not a sufficient reason for me to return. Charles sent him a monthly stipend, which combined with his pension was enough to support him. That was all I felt I owed him, or so I reasoned. "Aunty Ebele, there was no reason for me to visit. Mom, Ifoma and Emeka came to me in Lagos all the time." "Yes, I understand this," she said, "but you should have visited your mother to see how she lives at home, especially after Emeka and Ifoma left." I frowned, confused about her comment. "What do you mean I should have visited her at home? Do you know how your mother lived in the last 2 years before she died?" she asked. "Are you aware that your father drove her to live in the garage?" "But my father said..." "Your father said what?" Aunty Ebele asked. "Listen to me, Chioma. I won't lie to you. Your mother was treated like a maid in her own home before she passed away. Your father sent her away to live in the garage. And while you might say that the garage has been nicely remodeled, you need to ask him, what condition was that garage in when he moved your mother there? She lived there while she remodeled and furnished the place. And during the work, she had to sleep on a mattress. I don't understand it. There are 4 bedrooms in that house. If he didn't want her living in the main bedroom with him, why didn't she use any of the other rooms? I don't think you understand me, Chioma, Aunty Ebele said. If she could use one of the other bedrooms, don't you think she would have? Your father is a violent man. He beat that woman until she trembled at his orders. He sent her to live in the garage as punishment. So why would he allow her to sleep in any of the other rooms while the garage is being remodeled? But why didn't she tell me any of this? I queried. Chioma, you ask as if you don't know your mother. She was never one to easily open up or share what she was going through. The only way you would have discovered the truth was to come home and see things for yourself. I didn't know how to respond to that. Tears streamed down my face, and I made no effort to stop them as I sat with Aunty Ebele, feeling like I had let my mother down. Aunty Ebele was right. I should have checked on my mom more often. It's one thing to have someone visit you at your home, but it's an entirely different matter to visit them in theirs. Only by going to my mom's home could I have understood the true nature of what was happening in her life. In her own space, she wouldn't have been able to hide the reality as she did when she came to visit me. I asked her to leave several times, I said. Aunty Ebele nodded and said, I understand. She told me about it. However, she wouldn't have left because she didn't want to create problems for you and Ifoma. How would your husbands and in-laws have perceived you if they had found out that your mother ended her marriage? Wouldn't they have worried that you might eventually follow in her footsteps and leave your own marriages? For this reason, she chose to stay. She confided in me a lot, possibly because I lived next door and was aware of the things that most people weren't. I often heard her cries late at night when she was being beaten. I wiped my tears and turned to face Aunty Ebele. I thought that as he got older, he would be less inclined to hit her. Aunty Ebele shook her head. Not your father, not even when she moved into the garage. For a while she was silent, as though in deep contemplation. Then she looked up at me. There's something I need to tell you. I frowned and moved in a little closer. What is it? I'm not saying that your father killed your mother, but the night before her death, I heard her cries once again. After a while, everything went silent. About half an hour later, your father drove out of the house. What struck me as odd was that he never left home that late at night. I can't recall him ever doing so before. It was around midnight, and it was also unusual that your mother didn't go to open the gate for him, as she typically would. A little while later, he returned home, and soon after, we learned that your mother had died in the hospital. People are saying she was struck by a bike man who took her to the hospital after midnight. I've been wondering when she left home to go out and how she ended up being hit by a bike. Aunty Ebele's words left me reeling in shock as I tried to piece together the mystery puzzle. The moment she left, I called for Charles and recounted everything she had told me. He was just as surprised as I was. Why don't we go to the police station where the man is being detained and ask him some questions? He suggested. An hour later, we arrived at the police station. The man accused of knocking my mother and ultimately causing her death was brought into a small office where Charles and I were waiting. He sat before us while an officer stood by the door. As soon as we introduced ourselves, he broke down in tears. "My sister, my brother, I am truly sorry for your loss. But please believe me, I did not kill that woman. My bike did not hit her. She was lying unconscious by the side of the road, and out of goodwill, I picked her up and took her to the hospital. One doctor recognized her and called your father. When your father arrived, he accused me of hitting her and causing her unconscious state. I was still trying to explain what had happened when she was pronounced dead. Your father was furious and demanded that I be arrested for killing his wife. In that moment, I understood what had occurred. I had no concrete evidence. It was merely my intuition, but I was certain. My father had beaten my mother, and when she lost consciousness, he had taken her and abandoned her by the side of the road. Now he was blaming her death on an innocent man whose only offense was choosing not to leave her to die by the roadside. Upset, I insisted on going to the house after we left the police station, despite Charles's advice to wait for more evidence. I wasn't even sure what I would say. We arrived around 9 p.m. and the woman was there again. "Chioma, I wasn't expecting you again today," my father said as we entered the living room. "I hope all is well." "I was at the station to speak with the biker who took Mom to the hospital," I explained as Charles and I sat down. "He insists he didn't do anything wrong and claims she was lying unconscious on the side of the road when he found her." For a moment, apprehension flickered across his face before he bellowed, "The man is a liar and a murderer. He killed your mother, and I don't want you to see him again." He sounded quite convincing, I said. "I think that perhaps when the autopsy results I ordered are released, it will help absolve him of any blame." My father's eyes widened in shock. "An autopsy result? Who did you inform before requesting that autopsy? You had no right to do that, Chioma. You were overstepping your bounds. She may have been your mother, but she was my wife, and you had no business going behind my back to ask for an autopsy to be performed." "I needed to find out the cause of her death," I said calmly, grateful that Charles had his protective arm around me at that moment. "You were told the cause of death," he roared. "She was hit by a bike. That's how she died. Why can't you accept that? What are you insinuating?" "I am sorry. I am not insinuating anything." Charles and I left, and the next day, I invited Aunty Ebele for breakfast at the hotel, where she confirmed what she'd said the day before. "There's a woman I've seen in the house, Aunty Ebele," I said when she was finished. "I've seen her enough times now to believe that she spends the night there. Do you know her?" She laughed dryly. "Of course I know her. So did your mother." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "My dear Chioma," she began, her tone somber, "there are so many things that happened in the months leading up to your mother's death that I hardly know where to begin. I can't possibly recall everything in a single conversation." She paused, then continued. "That woman you've seen in the house is your father's mistress. Her name is Dumebi. She's a divorcee with 2 sons, and she played a significant role in the suffering your mother endured before she passed away. Unlike the past when your father would discreetly meet his mistresses elsewhere, this one was brazen enough to come directly to your family home. A lot changed because of her. If your mother ever challenged your father about Dumebi's presence, she was met with violence. In the final months, most of the beatings your mother suffered were because of this woman. Aunty Ebele's voice softened. Now that your mother is gone, it's likely that Dumebi will move in. She's probably just waiting for the funeral to be over before she settles into the house. Just as Aunty Ebele had predicted, Dumebi was indeed waiting for the funeral to conclude before moving into our family home. The funeral itself was scheduled a month after my mother's passing, allowing Ifeoma and Emeka enough time to travel back and bid their farewells to our mother. Throughout this period, my father was combative, especially regarding the autopsy. His behaviour during this time only reinforced my belief that the accounts given by both the bike man and Aunty Ebele about what had happened were true. Since we were unable to proceed with the autopsy, Charles and I found ourselves having to discreetly pay bribes to ensure the bike man was cleared of any wrongdoing. I was convinced of his innocence. I did not need a formal autopsy report to confirm what I already knew in my heart. In the days leading up to the funeral, my father behaved as if we were preparing for a celebration rather than mourning the loss of my mother. His lack of respect for the gravity of the moment was evident. Instead of joining us as we traveled to my mother's village in Isele Azaba for the interment, he chose to remain at home. There he spent his time drinking with a handful of friends, Dumebi among them, showing no inclination to share in our grief or pay his final respects. Once the funeral had concluded, my siblings and I made a collective decision to sever ties with him. His actions during this difficult period made it clear that we could no longer maintain a relationship with him, especially after the pain he had caused our family. He married Dumebi, who moved in with her children the week after my mother's funeral. However, their marriage didn't last. Within the first 6 months, he beat her, leading to her hospitalization. She never returned to their home and instead sent her family to pack her belongings. This news didn't surprise me. A leopard doesn't change its spots. I only wish my mother had had the courage to do the same, to leave an abusive marriage, to stay alive for us, her children. I miss her every day, more than I can express. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of episode 14 of DOZ Monologues. DOZ Monologues will return next week with another episode. If you have enjoyed this episode, please leave your comments and subscribe, like and share if listening on YouTube. To contact me, please visit my website eturivierebo.com or email me at eturivi@eturivierebo.com. I invite all story lovers to explore my novels and novellas available on Amazon and Google Books. For audiobook enthusiasts, they are also on Audible. Thank you for listening. I am your favorite storyteller, Eturivi Erebo, and I'll be here next Friday with another story.